It is one of the great disappointments in the garden, isn't it? You have nurtured your tomato plants from tiny seeds, watching them grow strong and leafy. They produce beautiful, bright yellow flowers, full of promise for the juicy fruits to come. But then, nothing happens. The little flowers simply wither, turn brown, and fall from the plant, leaving behind an empty stem. This can be quite disheartening, especially when you have put in so much care and effort. You might wonder what you have done wrong, but often, the problem is not your fault at all. It is a simple matter of biology, a tiny step in the plant's life cycle that has been missed. The reason those lovely flowers sometimes fail to become tomatoes is a lack of pollination. Think of the flower as a locked door, and pollination is the key that opens it to create a fruit. Without that key, the door remains shut, and the potential for a tomato is lost forever. This is a common issue, particularly for gardeners who grow their tomatoes indoors, in a greenhouse, or on a sheltered patio. Even in an open garden, certain weather conditions can interfere with this natural process, leaving you with a plant full of flowers but devoid of the delicious fruit you have been dreaming of all season long. So, what is happening, or rather, not happening? For a flower to transform into a fruit, pollen must move from one part of the flower to another. This is the very essence of pollination. When this transfer doesn't occur, the flower is essentially unfertilized. It has no purpose left, and the plant, being ruthlessly efficient, decides not to waste any more energy on it. The plant will simply cut its losses, drop the flower, and focus its resources on growing more leaves or other flowers, hoping for better luck next time. It is a natural survival mechanism, but one we can certainly help to overcome. Understanding this simple fact is the first step towards a much more successful tomato harvest. It is not a sign of a diseased plant or poor soil, but rather a hiccup in its reproductive cycle. The good news is that this is a problem with a very simple and rewarding solution. You do not need expensive chemicals or complicated tools. All you need is a little bit of knowledge and a gentle touch to step in and play the role of the bee or the breeze, ensuring every one of those beautiful yellow blossoms gets its chance to become a perfect, ripe tomato. To understand how we can help, we must first look closely at the tomato flower itself. Tomato plants are quite clever. They are what we call self-pollinating. This means that each flower has both the male part, which produces pollen, and the female part, which receives it. The male part is the stamen, which forms a little cone shape in the center of the flower, and it is full of golden pollen dust. The female part, the pistil, is tucked away inside this cone. In theory, the plant should be able to handle this process all by itself, with pollen simply dropping from the stamen onto the pistil. However, even self-pollinating plants need a little nudge to get the job done. In the great outdoors, this nudge usually comes from the wind, which gently shakes the flowers and helps to release the pollen. Buzzing insects, particularly bumblebees, are also fantastic helpers. When a bee visits a flower, the vibration of its wings, a process known as buzz pollination, is incredibly effective at shaking the pollen loose. This ensures the pollen falls exactly where it needs to go, leading to the creation of a tomato. It is a wonderful partnership between plant and pollinator, a perfect example of nature working in harmony. The problem arises when these natural helpers are absent. If you are growing your tomatoes in a still greenhouse, a polytunnel, or inside your home on a windowsill, there is no wind to shake the flowers. There are also far fewer, if any, bees to provide that vital vibration. The air can be very still and humid, which makes the pollen sticky and heavy. Instead of floating down freely, it just clumps together inside the flower, never reaching its destination. This is when your intervention becomes absolutely crucial for the success of your crop. Even for plants growing outside, certain conditions can create problems. During long spells of calm, humid weather, or periods of extreme heat, the pollen may not transfer effectively. If temperatures climb too high, over 30 degrees Celsius, about 86 Fahrenheit, the pollen can become sterile and unable to fertilize the flower, no matter how much it is shaken. Recognizing these challenging conditions is key. It tells you that it is time to step in and provide a helping hand to your plants, bridging the gap that the environment has created and ensuring a fruitful harvest. So, when and how should you perform this simple task of hand pollination? The best time to do it is in the middle of the day, generally between about 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. This is when the flowers are fully open and the humidity is typically at its lowest, which means the pollen is drier and more willing to be released. You will want to repeat this process every day or two while the plant is flowering to make sure you give every blossom a chance. It takes only a few moments and it can make a remarkable difference to your yield. There are several wonderfully simple methods you can use, and you likely already have the tools you need. The easiest method of all is to simply give the plant a gentle shake. Grasp the main stem or the stake supporting the plant and give it a firm but gentle tap or shake. This mimics the action of the wind, jarring the flowers just enough to cause the pollen to drop inside the blossom. If you have many plants, you can walk down the row, tapping each plant's support stake as you go. It is a quick, easy, and surprisingly effective way to encourage pollination. For a more targeted approach, you can use a small, soft paintbrush, like one you might find in a child's watercolor set or even a simple cotton bud. Very gently touch the inside of the flower cone, swirling the brush or bud around a bit. This will collect the fine yellow pollen dust. You can then move from flower to flower, dabbing the pollen you have collected onto the tip of the pistil, which is just visible at the end of the cone. While tomatoes are self-pollinating, moving pollen between different flowers on the same plant can also be beneficial. Another excellent method, and perhaps the most effective, is to use an electric toothbrush. The vibrations from the toothbrush are very similar to the buzzing of a bee. Simply touch the back of the flower, or the stem just behind the flower cluster, with the body of the vibrating toothbrush for a second or two. You might even see a tiny puff of yellow pollen fall from the flower. This technique is incredibly efficient at releasing the sticky pollen, ensuring it reaches the pistil. It might feel a bit silly at first, but the results speak for themselves. How will you know if your efforts have paid off? The signs of successful pollination are quite clear and very rewarding to see. A few days after a flower has been pollinated, you will notice that the yellow petals begin to wither and fall away, but the base of the flower, the tiny green part, remains attached to the stem. This small green nub will then start to swell. This is the very beginning of your tomato. It will grow larger and larger each day, transforming from a tiny green bead into the full-sized, juicy fruit you have been waiting for. An unpollinated flower, by contrast, will see its entire structure, including the green base, turn yellow and drop off the plant. To further improve your chances of success, there are a few other simple things you can do to support your plants. Good air circulation is very important, especially in a greenhouse. Opening vents and doors on warm days, or even using a small fan on a low setting, can help to move the air around, lower humidity, and assist in distributing pollen naturally. Also, be consistent with your watering. Plants that are stressed from irregular watering are less likely to set fruit, so keep the soil evenly moist, but not waterlogged. A good layer of mulch can help with this. Feeding your plants correctly is also vital. When the first truss of flowers appears, it is time to switch to a high-potash liquid fertilizer, often sold as a specific tomato feed. Potash, or potassium, is the nutrient that plants need to produce flowers and fruit. A feed that is too high in nitrogen, on the other hand, will just encourage the plant to grow lots of lush leaves at the expense of the fruit. Feed your plants weekly according to the instructions on the bottle, and they will have all the energy they need to support a heavy crop. Do not be intimidated by the idea of hand pollination. It is a simple, gentle, and deeply satisfying task that connects you more closely with the life cycle of your plants. It empowers you as a gardener, turning potential disappointment into certain success. By taking a few moments each day to tap, tickle, or buzz your tomato blossoms, you are stepping in as a partner to nature. You are ensuring that every beautiful flower has the chance to fulfill its promise, leading to a truly abundant and delicious harvest that you can be proud of.